Hey everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com and it's time to talk about a very packed Raw. There was a lot of stuff that was set to go down on this Raw, from the whole fallout with the Sasha Banks return to the start of the King of the Ring tournament and all that kind of stuff. So there's loads to talk about, but how good was it? There's only one way to find out, and that is by giving each individual segment a lovely individual grade. That's right, this is Monday Night Raw Graded. We start things off with Roman Reigns versus Dolph Ziggler. That's right, a match to kick off Monday Night Raw. Yes, I mean, there was a promo before that match, but it was quite engaging and it felt like a no-nonsense, let's get straight into the action start to the show. Also, it's worth pointing out that Corey Graves wasn't there this week. I guess he's on holiday or something, or on vacation, as the Americans say. So instead, we had Jerry the King Lawler on commentary, but not for the whole show. We'll find out what happened to him in just a little bit. So Ziggler gets the mic before his match with Roman begins, and he cuts a promo saying, "Hey Roman, I'm not some Twitter keyboard warrior. I genuinely care about you, and I'm glad you're okay after nearly being hit by a car and nearly being crushed by that lighting rig. But I just want to know, why is it that when all of these things almost happen to you, you still get loads of attention when really it should be me?" And he's doing the whole deluded, desperate new sort of direction, the kind of the weird sort of self-aware postmodern direction that Dolph Ziggler's character is going in. Ziggler then, to be honest, I'm finding him quite funny these days. He says that he was speared by Goldberg 3 times and it caught him totally by surprise, which if you watch SummerSlam is just a complete lie. He also says that he thought that Goldberg had to wait 6 months in between each spear that he dishes out, which was a funny line. He says that his head's such a mess because last week he was beaten by Maurice's husband with Ric Flair's move, and that's just too confusing a situation for him to wrap his head around. He finishes the promo by saying, "You know what, Roman, you're the big dog, but everyone knows it should be bang, super kick, cheap shot out of nowhere. Let's get into the match." I thought it was an entertaining start to the show. I know some people still don't like Dolph Ziggler, but he was getting the right sort of heat, in my opinion. This match wasn't anything spectacular, but there were some very cool and inventive moments, actually. Ziggler basically had all the counters, like Roman went for the Superman punch, Ziggler tried to roll him up. Later on, Roman went for the spear, Ziggler jumped into a Faymaster. That was a really cool and inventive counter as well. But eventually, and quite predictably, Roman picked up the victory with the spear and the 1-2-3. I'm going to give this opening match a B grade. The crowd didn't seem super into it, especially like those counters that I mentioned, which I was really into. But I still think, even though the crowd didn't enjoy it that much, I thought Ziggler was really entertaining here, to be honest. Some of you may disagree, but I really enjoyed him. So I'm going to give it a B grade. Nothing, as I say, nothing spectacular to start the show, but a very serviceable beginning to Monday Night Raw. Next up, we get a backstage promo with Becky Lynch addressing the attack by Sasha Banks last week, and I think this was probably the best thing on the entire show. Becky says everyone's been asking her why has she been constantly calling out the whole locker room since she became the Raw Women's Champion, and she says the answer's simple. It's because she wants to face everyone at their very best. She wants to face everyone at their peak, and that, now that she's returned, is where Sasha Banks is right now. She says that 4 months ago Sasha Banks ran away crying from WWE, her career as cold as ice, and now she's back and hotter than ever. But why is that? What did she do? Well, Becky says she did absolutely nothing. Instead, Becky takes all the credit in very Becky Lynch fashion, and it's pretty badass, to be honest. She says, "Oh, really? Sasha's the top dog now because I made her the top dog. I did what she'd been trying to do for her entire career, and all it took me were 2 press interviews where I called her out, and suddenly she's the hottest thing in the women's division." Becky says that she pumped more work into getting Sasha back into WWE than Sasha did herself, which is kind of true, and also says that Sasha is the greatest woman in the locker room never to have been great, and that is a hell of a line. She finishes this blistering promo by saying, it's so blistering in fact that I wish that it was in front of the live crowd rather than backstage, but it still was very, very effective. I'm not going to penalise it because of that. I just wish that it had been in front of a live audience. But she says that when she gets Sasha, she'll give her a real reason to run home crying again. I'm going to give this an A grade. I thought it was a fantastic promo. Quite a few people online were suggesting that it may have been the best Becky Lynch promo ever in her career. Out of the ones I've seen, I'm going to say it's probably the second best, behind maybe the one where she finally came out and called out Ronda Rousey and was saying, like, "Ronnie, I knew I'd find a way back to you again," and all that. I thought that one was a little bit more electric and a little bit of the moment, and it was in front of a live crowd. But this one was superb as well, fantastically delivered. The content was amazing, and it felt very Becky Lynch. I'm wondering if this was written partly by herself. It certainly felt that way, but I don't know that for certain. It was either really well written by a writer, or she had some input herself, and either way, it was very, very effective. There were 1 or 2 little stumbles, little verbal stumbles here and there, but I actually thought that just made it feel more raw and more, hey, more raw, more Monday Night Raw. It's Tuesday, come on everyone. oh, let's have a party. Yeah, there were one or two little stumbles, but I thought it felt more raw and authentic because of it, and I just thought it was a brilliant promo. It gets an A grade, and I think it may well have been the best thing on the show. Next up, we get the King's Court with Gerald the King Lawler, who gets in the ring, and he's about to bring out Sasha Banks for an interview so she can explain why she attacked Natalya and Becky Lynch last week. Instead, though, before that, he says, I'm going to just hype up King of the Ring for a little bit, which is very nice of him. He says, I'm going to make some picks. I think in the final of the Raw bracket, it's going to be Cedric versus Ricochet, and I think in the final of the SmackDown bracket, bang, lights go down. Oh no, you know what this means? It's the Fiend. I want to know who Jerry's SmackDown picks are, man. This bit's really cool. Instead of standing in the ring and waiting for the Fiend to come and attack him, Lawler, you can hear him saying to the microphone, no, I've seen this before, I'm getting out of here. And he wisely gets out of the ring and runs up to the top of the ramp, where the Fiend is, of course, waiting for him, clamps on the mandible claw, and we get another legend falling victim to the new Bray Wyatt. This segment gets a B+ grade, which really should be higher. It deserves a higher grade, but commentary really took me out of the moment, specifically Michael Cole. And I know it's what he's been told to do, and it's not his specific fault, but it really did take me out of it. Not so much him yelling like, oh, Jerry, he's behind you, look out, but what he said afterwards when he was like, Jerry the King Lawler has been attacked by the mandible claw from the Fiend Bray Wyatt, and it's like, show a bit of real emotion. It sounds so robotic and just like he's reciting buzzwords, which he's been told to do, but I just don't think it's that effective. The other thing that took me out of it slightly was them just plowing on with the show. Like, no sooner than Lawler has been taken out by the mandible claw than it's like, here's Vic Joseph to replace him, let's move on with the show, let's take a look at those King of the Ring brackets. And it's just like, oh my god, show some compassion for Jerry the King Lawler, guys. Vic Joseph was great, by the way, replacing Lawler on commentary, and also, whose idea was it to have everyone making predictions? Who does Lawler think he is? The Street Profits? Cultaholic? Let's move swiftly on. Next up, tag team action featuring 4 King of the Ring competitors, but this isn't a King of the Ring match, obviously. It's Ricochet and The Miz versus Drew McIntyre and the returning Baron Corbin in a lovely tank top. Do you ever go to a party or something like that and you meet like a friend of a friend and you've never met him before, but you just really get on really well, you just click even though you've never met before in your life? That's Ricochet and The Miz. They've never tagged before as far as I can tell, certainly not regularly, and yeah, they got along superbly. They're like the best of friends now. The lads are doing quick tags, they're hitting double team moves, they're high-fiving in between spots and everything. The finish even comes because they work together so well. Corbin's about to charge Ricochet in the corner, Miz is outside the ring and yanks Ricochet out the way, Corbin crashes and burns and rebounds into the recoil or the code breaker so Ricochet can pick up the clean pinfall victory over him. Miz and Ricochet, best tag team in the world? Yeah. This gets a B grade. It was fun, no major complaints, it was pretty snappy and short, but it did the job, made Ricochet look strong, and I'm now looking forward to seeing all 4 men in King of the Ring action. Even Baron Yeah, even Baron Corbin, yeah. Next up, Michael Cole interviews Booker T on Skype. Last week, obviously, he got Austin on Skype. Now he's got Booker T. It's pretty short. It doesn't take over the show or anything. And Booker makes an official prediction for King of the Ring, picking Drew bloody McIntyre. A bit later on as well, the Street Profits were talking about their King of the Ring brackets. And I like the way that they've made... I mean, I'm not going to grade any of these segments. They were way too short. But it felt like King of the Ring is an important thing. And it's kind of infused the backstage area. And everyone's getting involved. Even those who aren't competing in the tournament. I'm so sorry, Xavier Woods. I know you wanted to be in there. I feel really bad for him. Next up, one of those matches, right, which you have to kind of accept, and it was a match I was really looking forward to, and I actually wanted it to main event Raw. Obviously, other plans got in the way, and it was more of an angle than a match. But you know when there's a match you just really want to see in full, and then it gets kind of shunted aside for storyline purposes. That was this match for me. It was the US title match between AJ Styles and Braun Strowman. Strowman basically dominates the opening of this match, and then a few minutes in, AJ fights his way back in, jumps up for the phenomenal forearm, leaps off the top rope, and just gets swatted out of midair by big bad Braun Strowman. The OC are on the outside, and they're like, oh, this is not good, we better get involved. They do, and they cause the DQ in what could have been a bloody excellent match in my opinion. They all beat down Strowman until Seth comes out and makes the save and his cap doesn't even fall off. So untroubled and powerful is Seth Rollins when he's on the charge. Rollins, clears the ring, the pair of them shake hands and Rollins is like, well, I guess we're even now because Strowman saved him from the OC last week on Raw. But the segment's not over yet because after the commercial break we head backstage where Rollins and Strowman are having a little chat. Rollins is like, you know what, Braun, I know what's going on here. I know you want a shot at my Universal title, and that's cool because to be honest, you would have been my next pick for challenger anyway, just because I've got so much respect for you as a competitor. But right now, our main enemy is the OC. He says as long as we take out the OC first, then that's totally cool. That's why I've tried to set up a Raw Tag Team title match for later on tonight. And basically we find out later on that Rollins and Strowman do get that tag title shot. That's kind of the main storyline running through this week's Monday Night Raw. I'm going to give this overall segment, like the match and the little backstage bit afterwards, a B- grade, mainly because I'm so disappointed we didn't get to see that match play out more fully, but at the same time, I understand why not. It was just one of those unfortunate things where they teased something that I would have personally really loved, and then it gave way to storyline. I understand it, but I'm not too pleased. Next up, we got our first King of the Ring match. Yes, guys, come on. Samoa Joe versus Cesaro. What a matchup this is. This was one of the weirdest matches I've ever had to grade ungraded. I'll explain why in just a second. It starts off like electrifyingly. Cesaro charging across the ring at the bell, uppercutting Samoa Joe into next week, getting a near fall, and from then on, it looked like it was going to be an absolute barn burner of a match. Joe did a suicide dive at one point and it knocked Cesaro into the front row. They would both really look like they were going all out to impress and to help get each other over as well as themselves. But then there were one or two little bits that just didn't quite work for me. Like obviously Cesaro at one point, you may have seen, couldn't quite lift Joe for a vertical suplex and they had to reset and do it again. Or at one point he locked in the sharpshooter on Joe and there was a bit of a miscommunication on the floor, like turn over now, no, now. And there were just little bits like that that meant this match didn't quite reach the very high bar, admittedly, that it seemed to have. Joe eventually picks up the victory, avoiding the neutralizer, flipping Cesaro out of it. Cesaro then went for his springboard uppercut, but Joe slipped around the back of that, locked in the clutch, and picked up the submission victory. He progresses to the next round. I'm going to give this match a B grade after a lot of thought. I thought there were some really cool moments, but also some really sloppy moments, uncharacteristic of both guys in the ring, given how good they are. I went online to try and see what other people thought, and the consensus was there were some really cool moments, but also some moments that were really sloppy, uncharacteristically of both guys. So I was like, well, you've been no help at all. Thanks, Twitter. Thanks, Reddit. Cheers, lads. Great stuff. It's a B grade. I'm sad to see Cesaro go out, but I'm excited to see what Joe does next. Next up, it's time to walk with Elias, but sadly, right, don't cry guys, but Elias lets us all know that this is going to be his last ever performance because he's about to go into hiding to protect his 24/7 championship. Wonderful tactics from Elias there, I'm loving that. Unfortunately, there are audio issues all the way throughout this segment, deliberate ones it turns out, and then Elias goes to play his guitar, it's all out of tune, he doesn't know what he's doing, he's like, who tuned this, where's the sound guy? He gets the sound guy in from ringside to berate him in the ring, the sound guy pulls his hood down, and guess what? It's only bloody RTruth. There's another hooded man in the ring as well. That's a referee. I thought it was Drake Maverick at first, but it was a referee. That's cool. We haven't quite got the RTruth Drake Maverick dream team that I really want to see yet, but hopefully that's in the near future. Someone pointed out actually online a week or two ago, it may have been my boy Brandon Stroud from uprocks.com. Someone pointed out anyway that RTruth goes through all of this effort to wear these elaborate disguises and then unmasks before he hits the champion at the time. So why does he do that? It seems to work, but it didn't work this week. He unveils himself, he's like, it's me, RTruth, goes for a roll-up, 1-2, Elias kicks out, goes for a small package, 1-2, Elias kicks out, hits the axe kick, 1-2, Elias kicks out. He is the John Cena, he is the Roman Reigns of the 24/7 division with all of these kickouts. Truth gets frustrated, he grabs the guitar, he goes to smack Elias with the guitar, but Elias gets out of there and bails, his title and his reign still intact. This gets a B-, it wasn't particularly thrilling or particularly silly, and you want the 24/7 division to be either one side of the scale or the other, or both if that's possible. This week was neither, but it wasn't bad. I guess sometimes you need a bit of a breather week, a bit of a week to let the tension build and lead to something else. And then next week, we'll have Drake and RTruth leading the charge on Elias's hidden mountain lair / recording studio in armoured 4x4s with rockets pointing out the sunroof. I'm getting way too ahead of myself here. It gets a B-. It was a decent segment. Armour-plated 4x4s and rockets out the sunroof next week. Next up, a segment that I'm really conflicted about because Rey Mysterio gave an amazing promo here. He gave such a great performance. He was getting choked up and legit seemed quite teary throughout this. But at the same time, it was the setting of this promo that made me immediately not convinced by any of it, because he was backstage on Raw. Basically, Rey was teasing a retirement, and if Rey Mysterio was going to retire, you know that's going to be at WrestleMania or something, or at least on a bigger stage than backstage in the sterile Raw interview area. You know, Rey was great here, and I was just taken so out of it because it seemed so unconvincing. Anyway, he gave a really long and emotional promo basically saying, I'm a lucky man, I've got a great family, I love my son, I've had a great career, I've loved every minute of it, but at the same time, injuries are catching up with me in the ring. Rey then, says it's time for me to retire. He goes to take his mask off. The crowd go, no! And all I can think is, it's not happening because he's backstage on Raw. Why would he unmask? Why would he retire backstage on Raw? Luckily, Dominic Mysterio gets involved, stops Rey from retiring and says, no, Dad, you promised you'd tag with me for my debut when I become a wrestler. And Rey says, all right, I'll stay, I'll keep my career alive for now for you because I love you. They hug, it's really nice. This segment should have been so much better than it was, but it was just the setup of it took me immediately out of the moment. So it only gets a B-, but I do have to say that Rey's promo performance here was absolutely superb. And it makes me think as well, considering how genuinely emotional he seemed, it does make me think that a retirement is somewhere on the horizon, because it seemed like there was real emotion in this. Next up, another match that I was really looking forward to see, really hoping would be given a lot of time on Raw, but unfortunately another one that was kind of sacrificed because of storyline reasons. It's the Revival versus the New Day, and it lasts a few minutes, and obviously those few minutes are pretty damn good because it's the Revival and it's the New Day, but unfortunately it doesn't last that long because Big E's building up a big head of steam, and then Randy Orton comes in out of nowhere, would you believe, with a massive RKO. But then we get the post-match segment, which is pretty excellent, actually. Kofi Kingston runs out to make the save. He can't fight off all three men, the Revival and Randy, at the same time. He eats an RKO, Woods gets back in the ring, and he eats an RKO as well. And then Randy Orton, showing shades of like 2009 Randy Orton, like evil, twisted, psychotic Randy Orton, which is the best kind of Randy, to be honest with you. He forces Kofi, drags his limp body over, and makes him watch as the Revival destroy Xavier Woods' leg, which Woods sells really over the top, but really effectively as well. This gets a B+. The match itself wasn't much because it didn't get much time, but the post-match stuff afterwards was actually pretty good. I love this return to evil, psychotic Randy Orton trying to get in Kofi's head for a title shot, or a rematch, I guess. And the Revival played their part really well too. B+ is the grade. I wish I'd seen that match play out, but I think this was probably more important. Next up, an even shorter match, to be honest. The Women's Tag Champions, Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, against Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose. This was only like 3 or 4 minutes long. It wasn't particularly good, but it did the job. It was effective booking, I guess, helping to keep those women's tag titles relevant after so long, you know, in the background or on the shelf. Alexa and particularly Nikki still look very strong as champions. Nikki picking up the win, pinning Sonya Deville clean, and Alexa and Nikki are still the women's tag team champions. Yeah, as I say, this match wasn't anything great. In fact, there was 1 or 2 little sloppy moments. Sonya Deville looked pretty good, actually, but it gets a C grade. I'm glad that the women's tag titles are still on the show, even in this sort of very small segment, and I'm glad that Nikki looks really strong in the ring. Next up, our second King of the Ring match of the night, and another one that I wish had more time, sadly. Cedric Alexander versus Sami Zayn, and again, there's not much I can really say about it because it was so short. Both guys looked really good for what short time they had because it's Sami Zayn and Cedric Alexander, and Cedric picked up the clean victory with the lumbar check. This gets a B-. It was too short to really give it a high grade, and I'm really sad that Sami Zayn is being underutilized again, or I guess treated like a bit of a jobber, but at the same time, I understand why Cedric had to win here because of his continued push. I think it's important that he got out of the first round of the tournament. At the same time, I really wish they'd given them like at least 10 minutes to just go in there and show everybody what they can do. But I understand this was a particularly packed Raw and they couldn't give every segment 10 minutes plus. Next up, we're gonna jam 2 Sasha Banks segments together because they sort of followed on from one another, but they didn't take place close together on the show. So earlier on in the night, this is like Pulp Fiction, but Pulp graded fiction. Pulp grade Quentin Giacchettino. That's me. Earlier on in the night, Michael Cole is interviewing Sasha Banks like via live video feed. She's somewhere backstage. He's at the announce table and he says, "Sasha, this is an open forum. Let's just talk about what you did last week and why you did it." And Sasha Banks, pretty nicely heelishly done here, to be honest. She goes like, "Oh, well, all week, you know, I was looking in the mirror and I was thinking, blue's your colour, and I've dyed my hair blue, and now everyone's talking about how great I look online." And Cole's like, "Sasha, with all due respect, no one's talking about your hair colour." The crowd laugh at that. People were talking about Sasha's hair colour. That's a lie, Michael. But Cole gets to the point and says, "Right, Sasha, no one's talking about your hair colour. They want to know why you attacked Natalya and Becky Lynch last week on Raw." Sasha is not willing to talk about it by the looks of it. She just looks down the camera, says, "You're welcome," and storms off. Later on, we go to I think more of a medical room backstage where Natalya's there with her arm still in a sling, and she cuts an emotional promo saying that Sasha attacked her while she was, remembering, she was mourning the loss of her father 1 year ago, and then obviously that's when Sasha came out and basically beat the crap out of Natalya. So Natalya's emotionally and quite intensely talking about that, and then Sasha just comes in, she's there backstage as well, and targets Natalya's injured arm and says, "Tell your daddy I said hi," before she leaves. I've got mixed feelings on this. So this gets a B-. In theory, it should be getting a B+, an A-. It was really good stuff. Not a patch on Becky's promo from earlier, but it was effective, strange heel tactics from Sasha. But then we had that line at the end, and I've always got really mixed feelings about when a heel goes after a dead family member. It just makes them seem too cartoonishly evil for me, and I can't really invest in it. It just seems too far-fetched and too evil, if that makes sense. It just seems outside of the realm of what, you know, sports entertainment is, I suppose, especially in WWE's universe. At the same time, it reminded me, in fact, of when Paige was taunting Charlotte Flair about her, you know, younger brother who sadly passed away. It sort of takes things to a level that I don't really buy into, because obviously, I'm hoping at least, this was all green-lighted by Natalya, and I just think it makes Sasha seem too detestable, like she should be out of the company for saying something like that. Let me know what you think about this sort of angle, please, actually. I'll be interested to see what people think in the comments section down below. But anyway, finally, we get the main event of this week's Monday Night Raw. The champions, the Raw Tag Team Champions, Anderson and Gallows, against the challengers, Seth Rollins and Braun Strowman. This was a good match with the baby faces, you know, fighting to gain momentum, and they're obviously the stronger individuals in the ring, but the OC are working together, using one or two little heelish distractions from AJ on the outside, and basically being more savvy about everything as a good tag team to keep them down and to stop them from building up too much steam. The turning point comes though when AJ tries to get involved directly on the outside. Gallows is holding Seth Rollins like with his arms behind his back, ready for AJ to attack, and Strowman just comes steaming around the ring, takes out Styles, takes out Gallows, bodies are just flying everywhere because Braun Strowman's on the rampage, and there's no one else on the roster who can go on a rampage in like 2019 quite like Braun Strowman can. It all spills back into the ring. Strowman hits the running power slam on Anderson, who's the legal man. AJ on the outside, really smart, just thinks, I've got to cause the DQ. He rolls into the ring, bang, curb stomp from Seth Rollins. Pretty thrilling finish, to be honest with you. Strowman makes the pinfall, and the new Raw Tag Team Champions are Braun Strowman and Seth Rollins. He's a double champ. We love a double champ in wrestling. Feels like bloody universe mode. The two babyfaces celebrate, and then they go up the ramp together. They hold up their titles, and Strowman keeps looking at that universal title, and it's all a little bit tense. And the internet had a lot to say about this development. I'm going to give this a B+. I enjoyed the match. I thought it was a great TV main event, and I thought that everyone's criticism of this storyline, right? Everyone's been saying, oh no, will they be able to coexist, tag team champions? We've seen it so many times before. Yes, and I also think that this is probably going to get frustrating somewhere down the line. But for now, I can't grade it on that because nothing has actually happened that's bad yet. The OC have lost the Raw Tag Team titles, and I get why people might be frustrated about that. But I think for now, it's all fine. It could all be fine. We can't leap to conclusions and criticize something that hasn't quite happened yet. And yes, you know, we've seen great examples of this in the past. I enjoyed the Cena HBK one in the build to WrestleMania 23. I also enjoyed the classic ECW Tommy Dreamer and Raven one where they won the tag titles together and Dreamer was all conflicted. That was how you do it. I'm not saying that this is going to be as good as that, but I think this all rides on how long they hold the titles for, when they lose it, and I guess how they lose it, and who they lose it to as well. And if WWE tick all those boxes and it all makes sense and it doesn't get too cliched or too tedious, then it'll be really good. Are they going to be able to do that? We'll see. But yes, this gets a B+, and it was a fitting end to Monday Night Raw. A Raw which was full of twists and turns, I think, and good storyline developments. But how did it do overall? Let's find out. I'm going to give this Raw a B+. I think this was an example of an episode that was greater than the sum of its parts, apart from that Becky Lynch promo, which was, fittingly, straight fire. We had two King of the Ring matches, and the King of the Ring tournament just feeling very important. We had a few excellent matches here and there. The main event particularly was really enjoyable. That Joe and Cesaro match was a bit disjointed at parts, but was again pretty solid for the most part. And we also had the Fiend coming back and beating up or slapping the mandible claw on Jerry Lawler. And even the less impressive stuff on the show still kept things ticking over, still kept things relevant, specifically, in fact, those women's tag team titles. So B+ for Raw. I thought it was a solid show, and a show where they really utilised their 3-hour time slot, WWE, to the best of their abilities. I'm not a big fan of Raw lasting 3 hours either, but this week, they really made the most of that extended time slot. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter @Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.